to our first hovering lesson. To hover in ground effect means to maintain a constant position a few feet above the ground. It is not as easy as it sounds. In fact, hovering a helicopter is a bit like trying to pat your head and rub your stomach at the same time. A helicopter has 3 highly sensitive controls, but at first I will be giving you only one control at a time to handle. Your first control to master will be the collective lever. Remember, it is located on the left side of your seat. The collective controls your height above the ground. We will use it to take off to a hover. When you raise the collective control, the pitch angles of the main rotor blades increase. This increases lift and the helicopter climbs. When you lower the collective, pitch angles decrease. This decreases lift, so the helicopter descends. Easy, right? Another thing we will need today is the EPM, which stands for Electronic Pilot Monitor. You might remember it from our previous lesson. Today you will learn monitoring power percentage with a multiple limit indicator. The most important thing to remember about power indications is to never go over 100%. You can read more about that subject in the briefing notes. Okay, enough lecturing. Time to fly. Before taking off, always check that all gauges are green and that we have enough fuel. As you can see, the tank is half full. This is more than enough for our training. Now look left and right to make sure we don't have people or vehicles approaching. All good, and we are clear to go. You have collective control now. Slowly raise it to the point where we become light on skids. This will be around 65% of available power. Be careful. First you won't see any reaction to your movement, but power will catch up soon. That was a little too strong. Remember, the collective is sensitive and power changes have some inertia. That was a little too strong. Remember, the collective is sensitive and power changes have some inertia. That was a little too strong. Remember, the collective is sensitive and power changes have some inertia. That was a little too strong. Remember, the collective is sensitive and power changes have some inertia. That was a little too strong. Remember, the collective is sensitive and power changes have some inertia. Now, move the collective just a little more to get to 2 feet altitude hover. And don't mind us moving laterally. Today I will take care of that. Keep hovering at 2 feet now. You see, since we are hovering so low, the altimeter will be not useful. Judge your altitude just by looking outside. 2 feet is approximately 1/3 of the length of the Capri skid. Remember, the main trick of the hovering challenge is to move the controls as gently as possible. When you find a proper collective position, you don't need to keep adjusting it, given that we are not moving and there is no wind like today. Look around and memorize how 2 feet of altitude looks. Also, look at the power indications and memorize the number. This is the amount of power required for hovering in ground effect, and it depends on lots of factors, such as our weight and the weather. But you may find it useful to remember this number for our training today. Now let's see how little you should increase power to hover at 8 feet altitude. Gently raise the collective just enough to get to 8 feet altitude and stop there. Great. You're getting more and more confident with collective control. Keep hovering at 8 feet while I'm talking. Look around and try to remember how 8 feet altitude looks like. It is an important altitude. You should avoid climbing higher when you hover in ground proximity. We will talk about it more in our later trainings, but for now, just remember, if your engine quits when you're higher than 8 feet and you don't have enough airspeed, you won't be able to land safely. So, whenever you hover stationary in ground proximity, or a hover taxi, stay below 8 feet and you'll be safe. Now let's go back to a 2-foot hover. Still remember which power indications to aim for. There you are. I can see that now you understand the sensitivity and inertia of the collective lever much better. Our last objective for this training session is landing from a hover. Remember to always stabilize your hover at 2 feet altitude before touching the ground. Now, very gently lower the collective control until you find yourself firmly on ground. Congratulations! You just did your first landing from a hover. You mastered collective in hovering flight pretty well. Time to start mastering anti-torpedoes now.